We are living in times of ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, and Bard. That means we are already being ruled by social media. Social media governs our life predominantly, whether it's individuals, it's entities, or the nations. Everybody is out there, and all our lives, every information about us is out there. But along with it, the pros of it that are being able to connect, get time to time information, get real time updates about any incident, about close ones, going through a particular happiness or sadness or anything, every update we get on social media. Apart, with that, there are that, we are now witnessing the cons of social media as well, and which we have been seeing it for quite some time now. One of the cons which is impacting the society at large is the social media abuse. The abuse that's been done by various people on social media, whether it's for towards an individual, it's towards entities, and a lot of them are now, very easily classified as crimes under our criminal law as well. So this has kind of raised a question or the need and the demand to regulate the social media abuse, especially in India and of course globally as well. And to begin with, we need to understand whether our criminal law is up to date with, handling social media abuses or not. And to discuss this, to discuss the interplay of social media and the criminal law, we have two experts with us who are well versed in, helping to understand us. What is it about social media abuse that we need to understand, we need to be aware of, and how it can be tackled, and whether our criminal law is prepared for it or not. And to discuss that, we have senior advocate, Mr. Vivek Sood. He practices in Supreme Court and in Delhi High Court, and he specializes in criminal law and technology law as well. He has, of course, written a lot about criminal law and IT law as well, cyber crimes, and he's here to give his inputs on this very trending topic that's been going on about social media abuse. And joining him would be Ms. Megha Babar. She is legal counsel at Syngenta. Of course, being from in-house counsel, she has her own experience about how corporations are actually, companies are now dealing with social media abuse, considering they're also not quite far off from this fold of social media. So welcome, and thank you for taking time out for us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So to begin with, if one of you could just explain to our audience, the various dimensions or the types of social media abuse that today we are witnessing, and our audience will also kind of get an idea of what these are.
Thank you, Sania. Thank you for inviting us on this very interesting topic. On the social media thing, you have rightly put it. Social media is one of the, it's one of the trending things. We all are on social media platforms in one way or the other. And as you've rightly noted, there are advantages as well as the disadvantages to it. If we have to summarize it, I think it's one of the way of having, a democratic platform to, express your views and things like that, but without any editorial controls. Social media has while there are multiple advantages to it, there are also multiple offenses, or I can say that there is an abuse of social media by various people, and there are various types of abuses as we see. Most commonly, we come across trolling. Trolling is again one, is one kind of an offense wherein people's right to privacy is infringed. So whereas social media grants you freedom of speech, it's also somewhere curtailing the right of privacy. Unsolicited feedbacks and intentional inflammatory, exaggerating language against any posts made by anybody is the common example of trolling these days. We see that lots of media celebrities are are facing trolling. Not only the celebrities, but in fact, even in the judicial world, we see judiciary facing lots of trolling. Then the other category, which is very common, is about cyberbullying or threatening, where people are given threats. There is threat of violence, and then there is that is one way of bullying. The other way of bullying is embarrassing the users in one way or other for any kind of post that they would have created. Shaming, sometimes body shaming on your dresses. There are comments on your dresses, there are comments on the photo, because it's all open, right? There's no control in any way. Then something very important, which again affects and points towards the right of privacy infringement, is doxing, where the personal information of people can be circulated quite easily. Now, there is no control over these kind of activities in any ways. Then comes online impersonation, wherein anybody can just mask themselves in name of somebody else and just go and write things about anybody. This again is also, we can also say that lots of political leaders or lots of government authorities or bureaucrats are impersonated, and messages are spread across. In COVID, during the pandemic times, we have seen lots of rumors of these natures which have been spread out. WhatsApp is again is a medium which is used by multiple people for spreading news on behalf of some authorities, and just spreading and creating nuisance out there. It also creates panic. So this is again one of the biggest this thing dimension of social media abuse. Then we have cyber stalking, or what we also call as creeping. Now this again leads to various crimes against persons. Girls are stalked from their social media activities. They are followed, and then there are so many crimes, and there's so many cases that we have seen because of cyber stalking. Then there are corporate and professional attacks. In corporate and professional attacks, it has become a very easy medium for the employees to just go out and randomly post about their company's decisions, good, bad, ugly, whether it's true, false. There is no way by which anybody could judge, and whatever gets viral becomes it defames against whom it has been created. So to my mind, social media has got various social media abuse has various dimensions. It's not only against a particular individual or a particular segment of people or any association or caste or creed, but I think each one is affected in some or the other way by social media abuse.
Thank you. Thank you, Megha. Anything to add on here? She's actually covered a lot of, kind of offenses or the abuse that we are actually seeing today. So, sir, anything to add on here?
First of all, Megha has covered the ambit of, social media abuse, the various dimensions and kinds of social media abuse that are prevalent in our society. I will just add a few dimensions. First of all, social media abuse is very anonymous in nature. The internet permits a lot of anonymity. So the criminal, the accused, the offender is anonymous. He's not visible. People don't come face to face on the internet. So he could be anywhere, hidden somewhere with an internet connection and with all these proxy servers and all that. So it's a very anonymous crime. That's one dimension. Another dimension of social media abuse is the jurisdictional issue. These social media abuses cross geographical boundaries luxuriously, if I may put it like that. You may be sitting in Timbuktu and your victim may be sitting on Mars or Jupiter. And, you can actually cross thousands of miles through the internet while committing social media abuse. Now, as a result of these dimensions, collection of evidence is a challenge for law enforcement agencies. Investigating social media abuse is a challenge for law enforcement agencies. Another dimension of social media abuse that I can find is the viral effect of this abuse. It is not a one-to-one kind of crime like a homicide or a murder or something like that. Once social media abuse is unleashed on the internet through some defamatory material or if some images are created, some porn images are created or something like that, it has a viral effect. And therefore, the gravity of the crime of social media abuse, it needs to be considered by the lawmakers. Another dimension of social media abuse is that it sticks on the internet forever. It's very difficult to take down social media abuse because the internet is always multiplying itself. The right to be forgotten is very difficult to implement in the virtual world, although all the law enforcement agencies are trying to implement the right to be forgotten. So these are some of the characteristic dimensions or features of social media abuse.
True. Also, to add on to it, last point from my side, Sania, there's also lots of hate speeches that are being, done on the social media. Sometimes it is against a political party, or sometimes it's against a religion, or it's against somebody else. While we have freedom to speech, one should be also considerate about and rational about spreading such kind of hate speech.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sood, for adding that, and adding on to what Megha had already said. And that takes us to another crucial part of it. Like, once we now know what are these different types of social media and the different dimensions that it has. So, this has actually sparked the debate for, regulating social media abuse under the law. And how should it should be done. So, of course, one of the, ask is to define social media abuse under the law. So what are your thoughts on this? And, if you can share, what you think about the definition of social media abuse that it should be.
Before addressing this question, I may start by saying that the social media is the greatest democratic medium of free speech. It's so democratic, anybody and everyone is entitled to use this global loudspeaker called social media. That's how I put it. Now, while on one hand, it's a democratic medium of free speech, on the other hand, it has a darker side, the social media abuse. So defining social media abuse is a challenge. And law enforcement agencies or the governments are grappling with how to define social media abuse. An attempt was made to define social media abuse through Section 66A of the Information Technology Act. Now, it was so broadly defined that even legitimate free speech became vulnerable to being prosecuted or penalized or criminalized. So therefore, in Shreya Singh's case, it was struck down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional, being in violation of the right to freedom of speech and expression. Now, having said this, in my view, first of all, I have addressed this issue in my latest book, Chaff and Grain. It's out in the market now. In my view, we must define social media abuse narrowly. We should not define it too broadly. Maybe we have a narrow definition of social media abuse so that the constitutionality is sustained, first of all. And as we go along socially, we can expand the definition in the times to come, rather than coming out with an overbroad definition and then having it challenged in the courts and having it struck down. Let's have a narrow definition. And it can be expanded over a period of time. And I have, defined it in my book for the lawmakers and the policymakers to consider. Another aspect is that we must classify different kinds of social media abuse in different categories. Let's not treat social media abuse as one offense. It has different dimensions, as Megha put it. It has different kinds of gravities. So we need to classify this definition into different clauses, into different parts. rather than have one definition and say up to life imprisonment. Let's not have that. There are minor offenses, minor social media abuses, and major social media abuses. So that distinction has to be kept in mind. Now, I will not state the definition, because I would like my readers to, go through my book and find out how I have defined social media abuse.
Thank you. Megha, what are your thoughts on the definition?
True. Vivek has put it all there, and I have read your definition on social media, and it's really apt, and it's really, it's really to the time. It really talks about what is required in this new age. Apart from that, what I also think is that the policy makers should also be focusing on the procedures of handling such kind of cases. It's crucial that we define, the onus of proof. Because in this case, as we have already discussed, social media comes with a face of anonymity. Then there is also masking, and there is also impersonation. So the victim actually is not aware of who is the person who has actually created damage to the reputation of victim, or whatever the loss that of whatever the loss the victim may have faced. In light of that, it is really important that we frame down the procedure of having the proof, of having the burden of proof to be passed away from the complainant. It should actually be on the police authorities or relevant authorities to go and find out, because it's if I don't know who is actually defaming me, because either there is an impersonated account, or there is a masked account, or the whereabouts are not known about, I, as a complainant, will not be able to ascertain the jurisdiction of filing the case. I would not be able to get the proofs. In a typical pre-internet age, if there was a defamation case, it was very easy, because that time the print media was there, and the things were all available in form of hard copies, or for that matter, in any forms where I could just pick up and go and put forward my case. But today that is not possible, and hence lawmakers should take that into consideration, and procedures should also be redefined in this.
I would like to just give a short rejoinder to what Megha has said. I am not for reverse onus. I am not for the onus to be put on the accused. And of course, Megha has not said that also. She's put the onus on the law enforcement agencies. I feel, we must stick to the basic principle of criminal jurisprudence, that the prosecution must prove its case beyond reasonable doubt. I'm all for the Blackstonian theory. Megha will know that. She is browsed through my book also. My book is, it leans in favor of the accused, because I feel he is the condemned man, and I strongly believe in the right to fair trial. Now, therefore, see, we need deft cyber investigation. The normal police officers with badges and guns will not be able to investigate social media abuse. I read somewhere very interestingly that these hackers, those 18-year-old and 21-year-old hackers who are obsessed with the computer systems, they are the real policemen. They are the people who can investigate these new age crimes, and not these Delhi police and the Punjab police personnel. So with that, that's my view.
True, absolutely true. I mean, yeah, I mean, I was just about to drive from the same point there, that when I say the procedural change has to be there, we also need to adopt to the new technology mechanisms, and speed up with the evolution around internet and cyber age.
So very well said. Actually, that means, right from the process of inducting the investigation officer is where the actual study and, grooming them or preparing them for the kind of technology that exists and that's going to be coming, so that they are more, adaptable, and at the same time, they are, kind of well versed with the technology and able to tackle these kind of social media abuses and, investigate them. As Sir said, in-depth investigation is required. That can be done. So that actually takes us further, like we discussed dimensions, we discussed about, the social media abuse definition. But, apart from the individuals that are getting impacted by social media abuse, we are now seeing that, corporations or companies are kind of some, entities that are not, away from social media abuse either. They are very well, they get caught very easily in the folds of social media abuse. And although they are trying their best to cope with the situation, and, especially when minor incidences, whether it's employee related or, any kind of, issues that arise in a company, that can be very easily reported on social media. So companies are now actually kind of, also charging themselves and trying to tackle with this kind of issues. So Megha, you would be one of the best ones for us to begin with on the point of, how companies are actually dealing with these instances of social media abuse, and what actions you think, should be taken by them, in terms of law to protect them against these abuse.
True. So, Sania, companies have been facing the leash of the social media abuse for quite some time now. So it is, and again, there are various dimensions, or there are various types of such abuses against the company as well. While it faces the leash from their customers or the service recipients, there are also internal members, like employees or the vendors or the third party contractors, who also these days move up to social media to report against the companies. More we have seen more cases since 2019, since the pandemic has come. Unfortunately, during pandemic, many companies had to take certain harsh decisions, because everything was so unforeseen, everything was coming under the force majeure category. While supplies were not able to be done, people used to get up and go to the social media, abusing the company, saying that this company is just not good for. And we have seen downfall of companies who were well established and poor, and the companies like startups or small size had were required to wound themselves due to these kind of social media trials, is what we can say. uh, then I can give you an example of, there was a notification which was related to interstate migrant laborers, where they were not supposed to be removed. When companies took decision on putting people on sabbaticals or laying off people because their sites were shut, there was no business, nothing was working. Especially the small companies did face this issue. Employees thought it apt to be taken up to social media sites, to just go and post random things. There was nobody who was there to, actually go out and see whether the facts are right, wrong. And I think that's one of the dimensions of the social media abuse. There's no guarantee of fact. You can be defamed for something which is just notional, or which is just weirdest imagination of somebody's mind. And companies do face these kind of problems. Then there are certain websites where employees are free to post feedbacks about the companies. While this is freedom of speech, but there is also a thin line where you're actually invading the privacy also, and at the same time are not calculative about the damage that may be caused to reputation of those of corporates. We see that certain media trials happens against various corporate houses, and we all know the world is knowing that how the share prices and everything is getting affected. So the irresponsible use of a democratic platform which is given to somebody's use can also be can actually pull down your existence in this era. Now so while these are the types of social media abuses and the impacts on corporates, let me come on how companies are tackling this. Now what companies are doing is they have came up with certain social media policies, where they have defined what is acceptable, there are agreements, there are there's an agreement which is signed with employees on what extent they can go to, and in which cases that they can use their right of speech. First come to corporates, go internally, try to seek your redressals. There are disciplinary committees, there are ICC committees. There are so many committees formed by big corporates to solve the grievances of their employees. So one must first tap to those resources, and then avail its right of freedom of speech through social media. So companies have come up with these social media policies. There are various committees that have been formed where you can take up your grievances. Similar committees are also formed by companies for their service recipients. If you have issues with regards to with regards to product failure, or with regards to any services that has been provided, please come and solve your grievances here. So all those forums are maintained. Despite of all of these, if there are any, if there is still a leash out, there are various provisions under our existing acts where a suit of defamation can be filed, and company can use that law to its rescue.
Thank you. Thank you for actually sharing, how corporates are actually kind of coming under the fold of social media abuse, and what kind of actions that they are taking or preparing themselves against this. Because obviously, one slight thing that's come on social media, there's a whole social media trial. Of course, there's media trial, plus now there's social media trial, which can also impact, if it's a public company, it impacts their shares. And investors lose a lot of money as well, which is, it kind of goes down the chain. So, of course, there is a huge impact which people ignore. Plus, you were right about the fact check, aspect of it. There is no way to, fact check on social media. Although there are accounts, but nobody really follows them. So that's a huge challenge. Okay. So that now actually takes us to the last leg of our conversation, where after discussing the various points, we feel that since there is still that gap, and where the definition of social media abuse is left, we feel that there would be a need for maintaining checks and balances by policymakers. And both of you have highlighted in the earlier answers as well that, while defining social media abuse, there has to be that kind of balance that needs to be maintained. So if you can share what, would be those checks and balances. So I'll begin with Mr. Sood.
As I said earlier, that social media is the most democratic medium of freedom of speech and expression. And then you have a Lakshman Rekha, and then you have the social media abuse. Now, in many cases, there is blurring. The law enforcement agencies feel you fall in the category of social media abuse. The accused believes he is only exercising the freedom of speech and expression. And over the last several years, we've come across so many cases, reported in the newspapers, matters taken to the Supreme Court, different high courts, and the High Court and the Supreme Court in many cases have found that the accused was actually exercising his freedom of speech and expression, and it was not social media abuse. Therefore, first of all, in view of the importance of freedom of speech and expression, it'll be anti-democratic. It's a direct hit on democracy if people are arrested for exercising their freedom of speech and expression. And the police has a colonial mindset. I'm not saying that. The Supreme Court has said it time and again. They don't know how to put that Lakshman Rekha in the middle. They will just register an FIR and they will arrest the accused. And now, so therefore, in my view, first of all, we must classify all speech-related offenses that are there in IPC, apart from the new offense, which I have tried and endeavored to redefine, my avatar of Section 66A. Apart from that, we have so many offenses under the IPC, which are speech-related offenses. I have culled out some of these offenses in my latest book, Chaff and Grain. For instance, Section 124A, sedition. It could be seditious, it could be free speech. Wantonly giving provocation with intent to cause riot, Section 153. It could be free speech, it could be 153. Promoting enmity between different groups on the grounds of religion, race, place of birth, etc. Section 153. 153A. Then imputations, assertions, prejudicial to national integration, 153B. Uttering words with deliberate intent to wound religious feelings, Section 298. So some of these offenses, they need to be classified in a basket, first of all. Now, insofar as these offenses are concerned, there should not be an automatic arrest. I've said so in my book. There has to be a preliminary inquiry before an FIR is registered. There should not be any automatic arrest. There has to be a window given to the accused, maybe for 2 weeks or 1 week or 10 days or a month, in which time frame he must obtain an interim order of protection from the court of law, because courts are better equipped to classify and put this Lakshman Rekha, whether it is free speech or social media abuse. Then in such cases where the case may plausibly fall within the ambit of freedom of speech and expression, bail should be liberally granted. Anticipatory bail should be liberally granted. Section 482 CRPC, quashing of criminal proceedings, that power of quashing should be exercised liberally in such case. And all said and done because social media abuse can be called to be a very different kind of criminality. You have economic offenses, you have white-collar crime, you have traditional offenses. I would categorize social media abuse as a separate kind of offense. And there is a Lakshman Rekha in the middle. There are blurred lines. Somewhere there is a blurred territory. Free speech or social media abuse. I would advocate having special courts trying offenses of social media abuse, so that these offenses are grave. So there has to be an expeditious trial. At the same time, if some innocent has been implicated, he must get an immediate discharge or an exoneration. So I have advocated for special courts. These are some of the checks and balances that I have spoken about in my book, Chaff and Grave.
Megha, your thoughts, sir?
Yeah. Apart from these procedural and court-related checks and balances, I also think, and in my assessment, even the companies hosting such kind of social media platforms should be very vigilant while creating the platforms, and unrolling of the members. Whenever there are multiple accounts, whenever there are impersonations, we do block and we do report that this might be some suspicious account. Companies should be very responsibly taking actions against such kind of suspicious accounts. One needs to understand here that it is crucial that these fake accounts leads to the personal damage as well. There are lives which are lost. While the court will be responsible and court will take all due steps to pronounce its judgment, and as rightly said by Vivek, he's very rightly said that there has to be summary courts, there has to be expeditious hearings in these kind of matters. I think companies holding such platforms should also act very responsibly towards it. Apart from that, people using it, there also needs to be an example out there in market, out there in news, of some action, some stringent action taken against such accused people, where they are actually violating the law and causing grave loss to somebody. There has to be stricter actions, and those actions should also be publicized, so that a good message is spread across. Apart from that, I think even our government machineries, our enforcement agencies should be well equipped to adapt to the technology of finding out such people, of and they should really speed up themselves to go to the level of such accused people. It's very important that technology should be used to its depth to unfold such kind of cases.
Thank you, Mr. Sood and Megha, for actually sharing your thoughts on this very interesting topic and taking us through different facets by not just telling our audience about the dimensions of social media abuse and at the same time, defining about corporations as well, how corporations are now dealing with these kind of instances of social media abuse, what actions they are taking. So thank you both of you for actually sharing your thoughts here, and if you have any concluding remarks, please do share with us.
I would just want to say a word on what Megha said lastly about the companies, So she spoke about due diligence, So all corporate entities, including intermediaries. Normally, we use the expression due diligence, only for intermediaries. But in the corporate world, I believe, I strongly believe, if we have to check social media abuse, all parties, all stakeholders must exercise due diligence. See, first of all, due diligence prevents the spread of social media abuse. It mitigates social media abuse. Secondly, it also gives immunity to the player, to the concerned player, that I have done my duty. I have discharged my responsibility to the best of my ability, so that you can't be hauled up as an abettor or a conspirator, etc.
True. And lastly, from my side, to all those using the social media, various platforms, including me, we all use it. I think we should be using it very responsibly. Before liking or sharing of news without correcting the facts, or without knowing the accuracy of the detail that has been spread, we should not make it further viral. I think it starts from home, and it has to start from us. It needs to, social media needs to be used very responsibly.
Very well said, very well said. Of course, it's each one of us responsibility to know how to use social media. And if we come across people who are not, we should try and educate them and create that awareness, how it can, negatively impact people and companies and everyone around us. So thank you once again. Thank you for sharing your thoughts here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for putting us on this platform. And it was a wonderful interaction with Megha.
Yeah, same here for me. Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you.